every successful team, whether it's sports or business or nonprofit, that's the name of the game, is getting the right group of people together, helping them understand how much value there is in working together, and you as the leader bringing the best out of that unit of people every single day.
Three, two, one, zero, and liftoff.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Mission Control. This is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. And I am so excited to have a dear friend with me here, fellow colleague, fellow board member. Please help me welcome, I won't call him a retread, but he has been here before, Mr. Tom Matthews, managing partner at MC Fence.
Well, great to be back, Ramon. Yes, I'd like to think I'm new and improved since my last appearance. I look a little older, but hopefully I'm a little smarter, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and speak with you.
Absolutely. 1% better each day.
Yes, I love it. Progress.
Yes, progress. And you were here back in the day. You're an OG of the show. We looked it up. It was episode 19, and we believe it was during COVID. So it's nice to have you here in person without a mask.
Beautiful to be here. Simpler times now.
Simpler. Well, I don't know if they're simpler,
maybe
but
not simpler.
Different.
Yes, different. Well said.
Let's say different. So it's awesome. I recently saw you present on positive leadership, and so that's what we really want to share today. We want to talk about that. I think it's so important for our listeners to know how positive leadership can affect the bottom line, essentially improve your business, improve your teams. I think you gave quite the presentation at the chamber, and we love to dive right into it. And please tell us in layman's terms, what is positive leadership?
Well, positive leadership is really about the impact that you can have as a leader, and it is also a recognition that you as a leader set the tone for the culture that is created at your company. Don't wait for other people to do it, and certainly don't blame other people if it's not what you want it to be. It's the leader's responsibility to create the environment where people can thrive and success can happen.
Right. Now, does this mean like just come in with clicking your heels every day? Because there's another phrase you brought up, which was I think it was toxic positivity.
Exactly. We do not want toxic positivity, which we can get to in a moment. But you're right. It's a good question. I think positive to many people, even myself at times, can sound soft.
Yeah.
But it's not. It does relate to soft skills, but it's not a softness of character in any way, shape, or form. It's about your outlook, really. And it's certainly tied to optimism. And it's about your outlook for what's possible for you as a leader, and then ultimately for the people on your team. And then when you work together, where you can go as a company. I think one of the leader's main jobs in any business, no matter what industry it is about casting a vision about what's possible. And I think most people can't see that every day. There are people on your team who are really the closest to the action, so to speak, especially if you're in a customer facing business, which many people are, right? They are caught up in that daily whirlwind, which can be powerful and sometimes negative. And so I think it's the leader's job to remind them, and it's a message that has to be repeated, often about what's possible, because they forget that, they tend to focus on what's not going well and what their struggles are individually, and not thinking enough about what they can do as a team. And so that's your job as the leader, is obviously to not only cast that vision about what's possible for these people and their careers, and then ultimately the business, but then show them how they're going to get there. Positive, again, can sound soft if you just say it and talk it. So you have to live it. You have to set the example and be the role model as the leader in terms of your positive thinking and your positive actions. And it's not just a couple days a week. It's every day. Even when you walk into the office and you're not sure, can I do it this day? Yes, you can. You have to, because, you're there to serve other people.
Right.
And so you have to maintain that positive mindset.
Yeah. And I think there's this human element where we all have those days where we don't want to get out of bed. but you have to just kind of say, okay, I'm going to go give it my best shot. And it really is about the energy you bring with you to the office. And the leader has a responsibility to kind of set the tone.
Absolutely. And what can happen, or should really happen if you do it the right way, is that you won't be the only one doing it over time, right? Every office has a mix of people, right, who bring a certain set of experiences and talents to the office, and that's what makes for a great team, right? And you may have some people who are already there, and that's fantastic, but you also may have some people who are not there yet in terms of their positive mindset, and it's your job to help them understand the value of it and show them how they can get there. Because if again, not every minute of every day is going to be positive. There's going to be ups and downs, but by and large, you need to be sharing your positive mindset with others and really hopefully transforming the way they think about themselves and what's possible for themselves in the business, and then ultimately how they serve your customers. So it's a mix of you talking about it, you doing it, and then really helping other people accomplish it.
Yeah, and I love that you had this affinity for sports. You use a metaphor, and maybe talk a little bit about how you see coaches handle their teams and their wins, and how that applies in an office setting or in a business setting.
Absolutely. I am a big sports fan, and I've watched far too many games in my life.
Did you bet on Duke, by the way? Or?
No way.
Okay.
You'll never catch me betting on Duke. Never. I'm not a big betting guy, but I'm not in favor of Duke. We'll leave it at that. But I do. When I'm watching games, and of course I'm watching the action, right? The dunks, the passes, all this incredible athletic talent. I'm a big basketball fan, but it applies to other sports as well. I'm really paying attention to the coach, which does sound a little nerdy, I know, and I still enjoy myself. But I'm really watching to see how that coach reacts in a number of different situations in a game. It's interesting you bring this up. I watched University of Connecticut women's basketball team play against South Carolina on Sunday, and as most people know now, the Huskies are led by the legendary Gino Auriemma, who won his 12th national title. Yeah, incredible leader, and I've had the opportunity to hear him speak, and he certainly has created a culture of excellence. Now, he was coaching against a woman, Dawn Staley, who is a phenomenal coach in her own right, has had a lot of success. Obviously, she hasn't quite done what Gino has done because of her age and experience. But I watched her during that game. It was interesting. And now listen, I was not there. I don't know what happened. I am no expert. But when things went bad, she seemed to get visibly frustrated. Okay. And I watched her on the sideline, sort of her reactions. Now, I'm not an expert on her, but then I watched her players react. And it was interesting to me. I thought that when they faced adversity in this moment only, because again, they're an extraordinary team who has accomplished a lot, I felt like as a leader, I'm not sure that was the right reaction to have in that moment. Now, how much that impacted the game, and it's very easy for me, let me acknowledge this, to say this sitting on my couch in Connecticut. I don't know what was going on there. She has an enormous amount of pressure and responsibility. But she did not, to me, show the positive leadership that I think was required in that moment. And I don't mean when you're facing adversity and you pull out the pom-poms and start cheering rah-rah. I think she needed to let her team know that they have this incredible capability as a unit, and they have phenomenal talent, and they have faced adversity before, and they would get through this. Now, maybe she was saying to that to them in the huddle. I don't know. But it wasn't certainly being
body language you were noticing. Facial expression. She was
like putting her fist to her head.
Yeah.
Her frustration was so visible and palpable, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm not sure that that's what was called for in that moment. Again, I know I'm sounding judgmental, but since we're talking about it, I've just noticed the same with other coaches. Now, for some that works. But I think back to your point, you're running a team at work, right? And it's not that you can't show frustration. There's going to be some hard moments, no doubt. And I don't want to project here this idea that, it can only be happy times all the time. Mm-hmm. But I think everyone is always looking to the leader to see how they act in any given moment. That's part of the burden and privilege of being the leader, right? That people are always watching you and seeing how you react. So I think in moments of adversity, it's important to project this notion that it's going to get better, we're going to get through this, and we're going to come out on top in some way. Maybe not that exact day, but maybe the next day or at the end of the week. And I think that's what people, they may not say that, but I think that's what they want and they need.
Yeah, and you make great points. I think at times it could be counterintuitive to think that, if you don't act negatively, I mean, I think the initial feeling, and I'm comparing it to parenting as well.
Sure.
Leadership, parenting, coaching, that if you yell or if you appear angry, that you're going to get a positive outcome from that.
Right.
Doesn't seem like that's always the case.
No, and again, I want to be careful here because every coach, if we're going to go with that
Different style,
and some coaches who are yellers have created incredible performances for their teams and their cultures.
Who was the guy that bit the towel all the time?
Oh, was that Guy Lewis for Houston
or UNLV?
Jerry Tarkanian.
Yes.
Sorry, he was always chewing on the towel. That's
probably to prevent him from doing or saying other things.
Exactly. He was literally stuffing his mouth to prevent him from saying the wrong thing. I should probably try that too sometimes, especially with my kids. But so for some coaches it does work.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the team you have. But when you're a coach of an NCAA team, for example, you're really hand-picking the team, and there's a little bit of an advantage you have there. And of course, as a leader, you can build your own team, but I'm not sure it's quite the apples to apples comparison.
But do you think by looking disappointed, that she felt like that was going to get a rise out of her team if they're like, well, my coach is disappointed, so I'm going to do better?
That's a great question. Maybe that's her calling card, her style.
I don't know.
But based on their performance, I would say no.
I don't think they had a good night.
No, they didn't. And there's a lot of factors there, as I mentioned. But I think if I'm looking at that team who has an incredible level of talent, there's no way, even against UConn, who's an extraordinary team in their own right and did a lot of things well, I think they could have put up a better fight. Yeah. I think they could have shown more resiliency and made it more of a game.
Right. Now, during the presentation, you gave us some bullets. Maybe just share a few of those, some of the things that we should do,
Sure.
As leaders to be positive. And again, I also think of like the pilot, or the stewardess or the flight attendant, like you're going through turbulence and you're looking at them to see their reaction. So I think that's an aspect of leadership is modeling the right behavior or the right attitude. But you gave us some bullets there, like acknowledging people, and maybe just go over some of those things from a leadership standpoint. Sure. that our listeners could take away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So there's so many different things you can do. I have boiled it down for this presentation that I provided, and I think is helpful to people are 5 actionable items they can take. And I won't go into every item today because obviously we have some time limitations here. But one thing I think is really important that I talked about and believe so strongly in is if you're the leader, you have to promote progress early and often. That is really, I think, one of the great fuels for motivation and happiness in every human being, no matter where they work, is am I moving forward? Am I better off today than I was yesterday? And even if, you mentioned at the top of the show, even if it's just 1%, right? 1% of progress, then that's good. Then tomorrow, if I do another 1%, now it's compounding, right? So I think people need to be reminded of the progress that you're making. And again, it's hard for people to see it every day. As the leader, you tend and really should have more of a zoomed out view of your team and the business that you're leading. And so you're going to be able to see things that they can't. So your job is to share that with them, right? Especially when they're struggling with their own performance, or maybe they're a manager and they're struggling with the performance of somebody on their team. You have to take the time to say, hey, remember, Robin, how much you were struggling a month ago with Julio on your team. And look at Julio now. Look at what he just did last week. Look at how much more work he was able to accomplish. Look at how many more customers he was able to satisfy. And that's because of your leadership work as his manager. That would not have happened without you, Robin. And so even though Robin was upset in that moment because Julio had made some small, silly mistake, you have to help her zoom out and see the progress that's being made. I think that's really important. And people, humans have there's a natural tendency to focus on the negative. There's a negativity bias we all have, as I'm sure everyone's aware. And so a leader's job is to be the antidote to that negativity bias and remind them of what's been done. And I have a simple formula that I took from somebody else. I'm sorry, whoever that was, that I can't credit you directly, but it's this idea of always reminding people of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. And I do that often with the teams I work with because that's a very simple formula for demonstrating progress. And you have to be specific. Hey, at this time last year, we were at X number in sales, maybe it was 3 million. And look, at the same exact time this year, we're already at 4.5 million. And I know we're going to get to 7 million this year because look at the progress we're making, folks. We're going to go there, and you have to keep telling them where we were, where we are, and where we're going together.
Absolutely. And when we come back after these words, we're going to learn how you've come in and transformed some of these work environments with these tenets.
Beautiful.
At Peralta Design, social causes are very important to us. One of our trusted community partners and clients is Catalyst CT. Catalyst CT believes in social change that creates a lasting impact on community well-being. Catalyst CT tackles the tough issues that youth, families, and communities often face by preventing street violence, mediating and resolving conflict, improving school climate, boosting mental health, and planting the seeds for a healthy, safe, and restorative life. For more information on Catalyst CT, visit catalystct.org.
3, 2, 1, go.
Launch frames.
And we're back. Please help me once again welcome the one and only Mr. Tom Matthews. Tom, the fans, they're going crazy for you.
Wow, I tell you, that is a nice reception. I appreciate it, everybody.
They've been camped out waiting.
I know. I saw the line out the door earlier. Very nice.
You know, this is like Broadway. When you come out of the studio here, there's going to be people waiting.
I have my Sharpie for autographs. No problem.
Also like to introduce my right-hand man, Mr. Jorge Pezo Candelario, our Director of Web Development here at Peralta Design.
How's it going, everyone?
Yes, and we got good news on our dear friend Kevin. So Kevin should be back on the soundboard before you know it. But he's making progress.
Trying to keep him proud by keeping his same intro energy.
Yeah. Just very short and brief. No, you're keeping his seat warm. We appreciate it. We love you, Kevin, and we can't wait to have you back. So, Tom, just, we were chatting it up a little bit a few minutes ago, and, you got so many more gems for us in this segment. But I did want to, kind of mention how we want to get you on the speaking circuit, big time, because you have good content. I'm a really big believer in just putting out good content, and this positive leadership thing I think is going to resonate with a lot of people. One of the folks I just introduced you to, Corey Wilson, shout out to him at the Wire Association International, and shout out to Paul Lavoie as well, who connected me to Corey. But I think you do well speaking in that environment because these are manufacturers, and part of why I'm mentioning this is I think there's a correlation between positive leadership and today's workforce, today's generation and Gen Z, and someone brought that up as a question. They have this stereotype of not wanting to work or being shiftless, lazy. It's like guys that they just don't want to work in a toxic environment. They do want to work. But this idea that positive leadership is good for recruitment and retention.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You're right. I think there, is a narrative out there that, like every narrative has some truth to it, but I don't think it's certainly fully true. And I think you make a great point. It's not that they want everything. It's just they wanted to be, treated well,
right,
understood, and not be part of a toxic work environment and not have sort of a tight-fisted, heavy-handed leader breathing down their neck every day, and who could argue with that, So it's like, I don't think they have necessarily a generational problem. I just think there needs to be a shift in the way we lead to bring out the best in these people. Listen, every generation is different than the one before. And that's a topic for another podcast, right, obviously. But I think you have to recognize who is on your team. And then your job as the leader is to really modify in some ways how you lead to bring out the best in these people. I've had the opportunity to lead teams with almost exclusively young people. And I've also had, like many leaders, had a mix of people, right? And not everyone is going to respond the same way. So you have to really tailor a little bit, especially the way you communicate with these different generations of people, and also, their backgrounds in terms of where they've worked before, right, et cetera. So it's really important, and that's what makes leadership hard. It's an art form, right? There's not one way to do it to be successful. I do think positive really applies to everybody, no matter how old or young you may be, no matter where you worked before, because it's really tailored to bringing out the best in the people on your team. And every successful team, whether it's sports or business or nonprofit, that's the name of the game, is getting the right group of people together, helping them understand how much value there is in working together, and you as the leader bringing the best out of that unit of people every single day.
Absolutely. And I think there's an aspect of this that you never graduate from leadership. No. You've got to constantly learn. There's an aspect of this where we can talk about EQ a little bit, maybe.
Sure.
Emotional intelligence, because, you mentioned having a mixed group where the old school guys might think you're soft if you're talking too positive, and then the younger generation, if you don't acknowledge them enough, maybe they feel like they're not appreciated. So it really takes the ability to read the room. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. That's a big part of positive leadership. I'm glad you brought that up with the EQ. Your emotional intelligence is really what we're talking about here. Somebody asked me at the most recent presentation about, well, what are soft skills? Because I had mentioned that. And soft skills are your emotional intelligence, right? It's really your people skills. Mm-hmm. It's been rebranded a little bit, but that's really what we're talking about here. And I would argue, the most valuable leader that the most valuable tool that a leader has are his or her people skills. Everyone has hard skills, whether they're a graphic designer or a writer or a coder, but leaders need to be great at the people skills part of it. And really, as you mentioned, reading the room, right? I learned this phrase from my current CEO. So shout out to Larry Janeski here. Soft skill.
Friend of the show.
Yes, that's right.
He's one of the few that did a part 2 back to back.
Local legend.
He doesn't do things normal.
He does it his own way.
He recorded a show and he was like, let's do another show. Okay, Larry, let's go. And there were some of the most highly rated shows that we've produced. I mean, he's just, talk about it like a lifelong learner.
Yes.
He's always reading, always. He's very conscious of the software that's going in, the content he's consuming and the programming that he has. So, I mean, you're working with a great man. Yeah,
I'm very fortunate in that regard, and I learn from him every day. And one of the things he helped me understand was this idea that soft skills create hard results, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all in business, and we need to have strong sales, strong profits to keep the business growing and thriving. And so when we're talking about those soft skills, again, it's not about silly soft stuff. It's about the people skills that create the results that your business needs. Listen, every company relies on the team to get the work done. Without the team, you're nothing, right? And so you have to recognize that as a leader, and you have to understand where people are at on any given day of the week. And as you mentioned, reading the room is a big part of that, right? It's understanding that, some days are not the best days. And you have to sort of dial up and down your level of positivity based on what's happening in that circumstance.
Absolutely. Can you take us through sort of a list of do's and don'ts for positive leadership? I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think in 3s and 5s. It just helps me organize my thinking. So I have 5 of each. I mentioned number 1 is promote progress. The second one would be to act selfless, right? And this idea of seeking first to understand others rather than being worried about, am I being understood, right? Very simple but important principle. Show appreciation. You can never do that enough, right? It's, the 2 most important words in the English language I heard a writer say in a recent podcast were thank you. Tough to argue with that, And as the leader, you have to bring enthusiasm every day. I often joke that it's the opportunity for people to be the CEO, no matter what their position is, right? You can be the chief enthusiasm officer as the leader. Very important that you bring that energy to the office every day. That's one of your jobs. And finally, keep it light. Work can feel heavy and burdensome at times, but I always say to folks, it's just work. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this, and we're going to come out stronger and better as a result. So whenever you can, laugh. Make light of yourself. Everyone loves when the leader gets made fun of, I've learned. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But so laugh at yourself and let others laugh at you. Show some humility and shows a human side of you. So those are 5 things that I've worked hard to do regularly. I don't always get it right, but that's what I'm aiming for. And I could jump right into the 5 don'ts as well, because there's certainly things that you don't want to do, and that's equally important. First one is, you don't want to dismiss negative thinking ever, right? Not everyone is going to be on board with a positive way of thinking from the start. And so you have to understand that as a leader, right? So if people come to you in a negative way or with negative feedback about yourself or what's happening, you have to listen. You can't dismiss them because If you dismiss them, they will dismiss you as a leader, and then it's kind of game over in terms of your role and influence there. Second one is, don't ignore problems on a related note, right? If people are bringing things to you, you can't be like, oh, it's going to be great. It's okay. I'm positive. No, don't ignore problems. Face them head on, whatever challenge may be, however difficult it may be. And I think where positive thinking comes in here is you have to have the mindset that we're going to together find a solution. Right? So if you become more of a solution-oriented operation, you're going to be more successful, you're going to grow. And ultimately, as the leader, you want to develop other leaders who have that mindset, right? That we can find a solution on our own and we don't even need you in this particular instance. We'll solve it ourselves. And also, I would say gossip. Gossip is the poison of every work environment. It's really hard to avoid, but I would do everything you can to minimize it. It lacks integrity, and if you're gossiping as a leader, you're not setting the standard for communication that your workplace needs. Another big part of the workplace is drama, right? It's there. We're all human beings. We're all bring a certain set of emotions to the office on a given day. So your job is to stay steady and calm amid that sort of drama that's unfolding every day at the office. They need you to be that steady force for them. And you can't go up and down with the people on your team. You have to stay steady and then lift them up when they need it, and also in some cases bring them down a little bit when they've gone a little too far. And finally, the last one is a phrase that was shared with me, and that's toxic positivity. You don't want to foster an environment of toxic positivity. I often liken it to sort of the world that the Care Bears may work in, cupcakes and rainbows and sunshines and trophies for everyone. That is not the real world, and you don't want to create any environment that resembles that in any way. It's important that it's not just super happy and super fun and super positive all the time. That is not reality. So got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, excellent. I think those bullets should be like taped somewhere on the wall, of your office. If you're in leadership, I think it's very helpful to keep those things in mind. The idea that you're setting the tone positively, maybe touch a little bit about a problem employee, or maybe give us some examples when you walked into a team that wasn't performing to their optimum level. How did your leadership style kind of move things into the right direction?
Sure. So, before my current position, I was responsible for working with a business. We essentially acquired that business and then merged it with another business. And one of the first things I noticed was what a negative vibe there was in both cultures. So I said, well, this is interesting. Now I'm putting two negatives together. And I'm like, let's see if I can...
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Exactly, as it turns out. So I'm like, well, I have a lot of work to do here. But what I really came to understand was that people just had not seen yet what was possible for them in that workplace. They had been really directed, if you will, by a much more heavy-handed leader who was very focused on his own needs, and also not letting them know that it was okay to make mistakes and that it was an environment that could be forgiving. And that really this idea that if we work together, like there was a lot of very talented people individually, but they didn't know how to come together and be better and stronger in that way. And no business is going to thrive when everyone is just working individually, no matter how talented they are. So I really just talked a lot. I didn't use the word positive. I tried to be positive, and I believe I was. And I highlighted, as I mentioned before, the progress we were making all the time. I would walk around the shop. It was a home contracting services company, so they had a shop, and I would go out there in the morning and I would, fist bump people or high five, not in an annoying, I don't think, way or over the top way, just a sort of a gentle.
Not like a WWE wrestler coming into the ring.
No, definitely not that. I would just sort of quietly go around, give a little fist bump in the morning and say, good morning. Appreciate you being here today. Hope you had a good weekend. And just be present and just sort of try to convey a little bit of positivity in that regard. Let them know that simply by being there, I cared. I wanted to know them, get to know them a little bit. And when appropriate, I would recognize, hey, I heard yesterday you had a tough job and that was a tough customer, and I appreciate you seeing that through and not sharing, your frustrations on the job and, coming back and talking to your manager about that and being a pro. So whenever possible, I would do that. And, the folks that I was working with who had those roles, they were very different from me. Their work experiences were different. Their life experiences were different. So when they looked at me, they're like, this guy is not one of us, right? And I understood that. And it was honestly hard for me to go in that shop every day and do that because I was way out of my comfort zone. And they knew and did things that I couldn't. So I sometimes felt a little naked. I'm like, boy, if these guys ask me, how do we install this? Or what do you do in this situation? I would have to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And luckily, they were pretty kind to me in those regards. And I think the fact that I was open with them and never tried to pretend to be somebody I wasn't was helpful.
You were real. You kept it real.
I really tried to. So that's one way I did it. And the other thing I want to share real quick in terms of keeping it positive, you asked for something specific. You know, we had this segment with our leadership team that I called the good news opening to every meeting. And when I first brought this to their attention, naturally they all rolled their eyes at me and they're like, oh God, here goes Mr. Positive again, right? But I said, listen, folks, this is going to work.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yes, exactly. With my cardigan. And they said, why are we doing this, Tom? I said, we're going to talk about what's good in your personal life and professional life at the beginning of our weekly leadership meeting, because it's easy to overlook that, and it's easy to forget how many good things are happening every day. I understand how hard you're working, and I understand you're hearing and seeing and working on things that I don't, that are really hard, and I appreciate that. But I'm trying to help you as a leader rise above that for just this moment and recognize the goodness that has been accomplished in your personal life and professional life in some small way over the past week. I know there's at least one thing personally and professionally that's worth talking about. And over time, they opened up and they shared more about some of the good things were happening. And listen, these are not life-changing things. Maybe they got the chance to watch their son play a soccer game, or maybe they competed in a mountain bike race and that's something they love to do. And maybe they saw progress from somebody on their team, and maybe somebody on their team is getting married. Who knows, right? We weren't a massive company, but we were big enough that those things could be overlooked and not communicated. And when we talked about them, it reminded them of what was good. And it, I think, helped them think more about optimistically what could happen every day and not just think about what's negative. And it also brought us closer together as a team. We tightened our connection. And that's a big part of positive leadership too, is being a tighter, more well-connected team so you can do more together.
Yeah, and I think the word trust comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Because if you're walking into a place where this is how we do things here, and they're like, this guy doesn't know how to run the, I don't know, the
jackhammer,
the jigger machine, or whatever you guys have.
Exactly.
The fence, fencing post maker tool. But he's here to tell me what to do. I'll show him. You know, there's got to be that element where they just think your leadership, management, boss, all these things don't have a positive connotation. And I think a lot of the tactics you've just described would go far in gaining their trust. And then, you trust someone, you can work with them, you're willing to go the extra mile for them. Yeah,
it's an excellent point. And I do think I was able to accomplish that. It doesn't happen overnight, right? Like you said, you have to be real. You have to, show some level of humility, and you really have to seek to understand what they're thinking and feeling on any given day. And I'm not talking about having a therapy session in the shop. It's just, hey, how are you doing? And if they tell you, well, to be honest with you, I'm having a lousy day. Well, tell me why. Tell me what happened. Is there anything I can do to help? And that, you're right, is how you build trust. And over time, you really build goodwill with the people on your team. And let me tell you, you're going to need that, because there are going to be times you have to make, as the leader, hard decisions that definitely aren't positive, and there's no way to put a positive spin on it. But if you've built a certain level of trust and goodwill with them, they will still go with you. They will voice their displeasure as they should, and they will not be happy with you. And I experienced that. But if you have the trust and goodwill there, they will still sort of fight another day for you and work hard for you. And eventually they'll be like, okay, that was hard for us as a company. It was hard for me personally, but I know what Tom's doing. I believe in him, or any leader, and I'm going to keep going.
Excellent. You mentioned at the presentation a few things that you do that seem trivial but actually make a big impact, and one of them that stood out was the writing the notes and things like that. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. Shout out to my mom for teaching me the value of thank you notes. Early in life, she made it clear that for every birthday gift I received or some sort of graduation gift, I would be at the kitchen table writing a thank you note, and she would review it, and then I would mail it. And I said, okay.
That's where you honed in your writing skills.
Yeah, everything I can do as a writer, which is still a work in progress, is thanks to my mom and some other great people in my life. But she said, you have to express gratitude. And we didn't talk at great length about gratitude. She just said this. She just showed me this is how it happens. And so I've always been a big believer in thank you notes. And I think it's a great way, back to your point about trust with people, you build a sense of trust when you give somebody a thank you note. And appreciation, of course, is an incredibly admirable characteristic in people, and it's what people respond to when they feel recognized and appreciated. So what I do with people is I would write them thank you notes, and I would leave them at their desk sometime, after work. Everyone's gone for the night, and I'll just take 5 minutes to write a thank you note for something somebody did that day. Or maybe on a Friday, I'm like, hey, that's been a particularly good week for our marketing manager or a call center leader, and I write a very short note. It does not have to be eloquent. It just has to be a recognition that I appreciate them and that they're a valued member of this team, and I'm so happy they're here. And then occasionally I would take it one step further. If somebody had turned in a particularly high performance, and I would mail a note to the person's home, or maybe I knew there was a struggle that was going on and they were still showing up at work, and I would send a note to their home because I wanted to let both them and their family know how much I appreciated what they're doing, how valuable they are to the company. And I wanted to signal, particularly to the people in the house, who weren't the employee, that they're at the right place. Like, it's hard when dad gets up so early every morning and isn't there, or comes home late, or mom. And so I wanted to show the spouse and the kids, hey, listen, we appreciate your dad, and I know it's hard sometimes, but I think he's in the right place with us, and I hope you do too.
That's a nice touch. Now, do you have a piece of advice or a useful tip, like if you had to summarize this down for our listeners based on something you've learned as you've improved your leadership skills?
In terms of positive leadership or in general?
In general.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the phrase before, be a continuous learner. Mm-hmm. I wish somebody had told me that sooner. I went to high school, obviously I went to college. I'm very fortunate that way, but I had never heard that phrase. And I'm around a lot of people who are pretty smart, to be honest with you. I never heard that phrase, continuous learner, but then I picked it up from Larry Janeski, be a continuous learner, and he demonstrates it like you said. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I really recommitted myself to learning and being a continuous learner. And certainly I'm a work in progress, but I do study leadership. I listen to podcasts. I listen to books. As I mentioned, I watch the coaches on this. I'm always thinking about what can I learn from somebody else to be better for the people on my team. Excellent
piece of advice. This is something we'll never graduate from. It's like golf. I'm never going to master it. I'm never going to master leadership. I just got to keep learning, keep getting better at it every day. It sounds like you're at an amazing company. Surely they have an amazing leader in you. Tell us a bit about MC Fence and how it all relates to Contractor Nation.
Sure. So Contractor Nation is essentially our parent company, founded by our CEO, Larry Janeski. And our main role is to help other contractors be successful. So we provide products and services and a level of support that make contractors across the country in a number of different services more successful. We really teach them how to be better leaders and make their businesses more effective for the customers they serve and their employees. So it's a wide range of services, from basement waterproofing to foundation repair and gutters and roofs. And now we have entered the space of fence. We really believe strongly that while it's competitive out there, that we can provide a better customer experience and a greater level of service for homeowners. We're starting here in Connecticut. We have a residential fence company, MC Fence of Southern Connecticut, and we serve most of Connecticut, the homeowners there. And then our plan is to expand this into a franchise, a national network of franchisees across the country, where we can provide, higher level again of service and customer experience to homeowners really across the country, and really help people build better businesses.
Now you have a dog as part of the logo. Any story behind that?
Well, it's interesting you say that. First and foremost is most people, we believe, buy fences for pools and dogs. Not all. They have their own needs. They want to beautify their property, or they
have a neighbor they don't like.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Fences make good neighbors and all that business. But we found that a lot of people in this day and age in particular are looking to keep their dog protected and safe and away from other people. And so we felt like that was helpful to have the dog part of the logo, because it really is part of our business. It's not the only part. And frankly, we think it's a pretty cute dog. And we'd like to think that the logo is memorable. Yeah. So time will tell, and I'll wait for marketing experts like yourself to weigh in on that. If it's bad, don't tell me on the air, please. Let's save it for later. But we have gotten a good response to it.
Good. And it's like chain link? Is it picket? Is it all of the above?
All of those residential fence types: vinyl, wood, chain link. and aluminum, which you often see the black aluminum fences around pools. So those are our mainstays for fence, and we have a wide variety within those fence types of, different decorations, different gates, hardware, everything. You name it, we can do it.
Awesome. And how can folks learn more or find out where to get estimates and things of that nature?
Sure. Thank you for asking. You can find us at our website, mcfenceofsouthernconnecticut.com. I know it's a mouthful. You can just Google it, of course.
Is it CT, or are you guys spelling it all?
No, we just go CT.
Okay.
Exactly. We showed some mercy there, but,
Or his head spinning. Like,
Yeah.
what domain would be shorter?
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. You should have consulted me first. But
So MC Fence of SouthernCT.com.
Exactly. And so you can also just obviously Google it and find us. And it's MC as in Master Craftsman. And
Not MC Hammer?
Not MC Hammer. We did think about getting him as a spokesman. Get those big baggy pants going. I think I still have a pair from high school. But anyway.
Oh.
And you can also find us on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook.
Excellent. Well, Tom, thank you. They've got a leader in you for sure. I'd love to see this go on the road, and I wish you the best in your writing and in your speaking opportunities. And also just shout out to Larry again. I think he would agree with me. You're a keeper.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about my leadership in the company. And I'm excited to help other people whenever possible.
Absolutely. We'll keep paying it forward.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mission Control. Until next time, this is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands.